So, really appreciate you being here. As was mentioned, this will be videotaped, so if you don't want to be on camera or your voice to be on camera, you might choose to avoid saying stuff or so on. So that's just so letting you know. All right, so I already gave my presentation, and I already described to you what Intentional Insights is about. So let's dive into the meat of the matter. Help clients win at life. That's our goal here. How do you help clients succeed using emotional intelligence and rational thinking? So what this presentation will do is talk about how you can help clients succeed using these strategies of rational thinking and emotional intelligence. And I'm going to focus on a broad shared framework of understanding, a broad shared framework that will help clients succeed using rational thinking and emotional intelligence, and establishing that shared framework with the clients as something that is fundamental to the ability, to your ability to help clients succeed. So shared framework of thinking. There will be some things passed around that will be both used during the presentation and as part of Intentional Insights materials.
No.
Okay. So, the first thing I want to ask is, I want to inquire what kind of problems your clients have. So, as Jeff mentioned, he is a friend of mine, and I talk to him sometimes about the kind of problems that clients experience in broad terms, but I wanted to know about the rest of you and what kind of problems your clients tend to experience. Somebody who would be want to do so. Relationships. Can you give me an example of a typical client that would have, not a specific client of course, but a typical example of a problem that a client would have?
I would say the two most typical problems I see are a parent who is having difficulty connecting with their child, or wanting to like shape or mold their child's behavior, and then the romantic type of relationship, whether it's a partner or spouse.
Okay.
And there's a disconnect between the two of them.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for highlighting those. Other people, what kind of problems do your clients tend to experience?
I see a lot of teenagers, so it's a lot of like suicidal ideation or bullying in the schools, just trying to find themselves, that kind of stuff.
Okay, so self-discovery, self-understanding, bullying, dealing with that. Anyone else wants to share any problems?
I work with clients or patients that maybe have experienced traumatic brain injury or trauma of some kind, either from self-injury or accidents.
So dealing with those sorts of traumatic events. Okay, so thank you for sharing some of those kinds of problems. Now, what are the gaps between your clients and their goals? So for example, the kind of clients that you have who have various trauma, they presumably want to get over the trauma and want to deal with that. Or the clients who you have, let's say the parents who are more conscious, they are trying to figure out how to connect to the children and how to figure those dynamics out. Or the couples, they're trying to figure out how to connect with each other if they can't even connect. Or the teenagers who are trying to find themselves, who are trying to think about these things. What kind of gaps, or other people, what kind of gaps do your clients experience between their problems and the goals, the kind of things that you tell them that they should be doing in order to resolve their situation?
Developing healthy coping skills is one I do with the teenagers.
And what are some of the challenges that the teenagers run into in developing healthy coping skills?
Well, a lot of times just not even having like an outlet or not knowing what their options are or how to deal with their emotions, so just giving them options.
Okay, so giving them options, strategies, tools.
One major gap I see is like the actual motivation to change. Because
Mhm.
a lot of times in a relationship, with the relationship problems, they want the other person to change.
Mm.
And so they themselves are not necessarily motivated to change,
Mhm.
which can be a big barrier.
Yeah, the motivation to change is a huge barrier, isn't it? And I bet you run into that with the teenagers too, the motivation to change, the motivation to do the tough self-change. Who among you has clients for whom that motivation to change, to do the tough self-change is a big problem? Yeah, that's a really big issue that a lot of clients have encountered. Just that fundamental, even without the specific strategies, you know, you tell your clients to do something, you tell your clients to do something that they really should be doing, and you know they should be doing. And you know that this will help fix their problems, but they don't have that motivation. They don't have the ability to, it's not even their ability that they're not motivated, they're not emotionally impelled to undergo the tough self-change activity that you know they need to go. So that's a big problem. That's a big gap. And did you check whether this plays as periods?
Oh, no.
Let me see if it does.
Attending this workshop.
Okay, good. So for many clients, it is often a problem to even figure out their goals. So even to figure out what they want in life. So I'm going to use an example of a case study that comes from my own practice, but it resonates very much with that teen idea of teenagers being able to find themselves and being able to figure out what they even want in life. And the same thing with, I think, people, for example, in relationships that you mentioned, who want the other person to change, or who may not even know what they want in the relationship, who may not even know what their goals are, what they need to figure out. So it's sometimes not even a matter of achieving their goals, but refining their goals, figuring out what their goals are. So one of the things I help people with in my own teaching and my own coaching is finding their purpose in life, so finding their sense of meaning and purpose. And I wrote a book called Find Your Purpose Using Science, which uses psychology, cognitive neuroscience, cognitive behavioral therapy, and other strategies to help people figure out how to find their purpose and meaning in life. And I gave some workshops on this topic, and so I just want to show this video of a young man who was...
Make sure the volume.
Okay. Who was in one of these workshops. So let's see if we can play it and if the volume will be loud enough for you to hear.
Actually, in the middle of a pretty intense life
How's that?
plan, I don't know what I
Loud.
want to do. I don't really have any sort of even direction as to where to even start. And so when I attended this workshop, and so
Let's see. Close higher.
Oh, there we go. Yeah. Boost it up.
Yay.
went to Dr. Sapersky and discussed with group members as to what meaning life has for us and what's important to us. I began to ask myself the same questions. Well, what do I find important and what do I want to do with that? And so basically it's from there that, and furthermore from this workshop, I started to gain the initial steps I feel I need to really answer those tough questions, those very big questions. And then with that, I also feel that I gained the confidence to be able to proceed forward in the pursuit of these goals. And where I feel others would benefit is in the exact same way. They can find what's important to them and what sort of meaning life holds for them, because for each person that meaning is different. And so by attending a workshop such as this, you might find your own meaning and your own fulfilled sense of purpose.
So he's referring to that broad, overarching understanding of meaning and purpose in life that is very important for teenagers to find, but for all of us to find. And that's what I was addressing in that book and that sort of offering. And that relates to the motivation, so people feel motivated. What purpose in life, the concept of purpose in life, what the research uses to refer to purpose in life, is that broad, overarching motivation that motivates us to pursue the kind of activities we pursue in our everyday life. So that's what purpose in life means in the research literature. Very important concept. Now, some of your clients may not have that sort of issue, but they have other issues. So how can you help your clients make wise decisions to achieve their goals? Now, that involves evaluating, helping your clients understand the truth of reality, helping your clients understand where they are, where they need to go, and what are the best methods of getting there, and to make wise decisions on this path from where they are to where they need to go. And helping convince them, helping motivate them, helping show them what they actually need to do to make these wise decisions. You need to help clients understand how to reach their goals. What are the specific steps they need to do, they need to take in order to reach their goals. And so that is those specific steps. That's the direction that your clients need to go. That's a crucial function. And you need to figure out how to motivate them to take those steps to reach their goals. So here I want to stop and have you take a look at the paper that you have in front of you that was handed out, the white paper. And I specifically want you to take a look at the back of that paper. And that lists the common thinking errors, they're called cognitive biases, that tend to predominate in human minds, that cause us to make errors in our decisions. And I want you to take about 3 minutes to look at that and see what are the most common thinking errors that your clients run into. So take 3 minutes, and then I will ask several of you to share what kind of thinking errors your specific clients run into and what strategies you would recommend to help them deal with it. Sorry, 3 minutes. So, I'd like to hear your thoughts on what kind of planning errors, thinking errors your clients experience, and how do you think they can be dealt with? Yes, Jim.
One I think I have seen in every environment in which I've worked is hyperbolic discounting.
Okay.
The tendency for people to prefer short-term benefits over long-term but larger gains.
Okay.
And one thing that I have found to be useful is simply helping someone to become aware that this is happening. That this is something which you're doing, which people often do, which is preferring the short-term comfort over a long-term benefit or achievement.
Yeah, that's definitely a good strategy to deal with hyperbolic discounting, and just pointing it out to them helps, and also creating systems for them to deal with it helps. So something that I think I remember you and I talking about once is helping clients just save $1 a day, and then saving from $1 a day to $2 a day to $3 a day to $4 a day really helps improve their savings going forward. And it's very much of a long-term aspiration, but it's that short-term, minimal pain in the short term, that sort of savings. So dealing with that hyperbolic discounting, specifically of dealing with it in the situation of savings. And same, we can apply that to anywhere. So, for example, in relationships, we're talking about romantic relationships or parent-child relationships. Thinking about, well, what if your relationship looks like this in 6 months down the road? You know, do you still do you really want your relationship to look like this? Well, what steps can you take to change it so that it doesn't look like this 6 months down the road? And that's applicable to any sort of situation, any sort of social worker, therapist interaction with your client. You know, look at it 6 months down the road, look at it 1 year down the road. What does it look like? What does the situation look like? Where are you heading? What steps can you take right now to change it to a direction where you would actually want to go? So that could be some strategies that you would recommend to your clients to deal with this sort of issue. Other cognitive biases that your clients may experience.
I'd say the confirmation bias. I've spent 28 years working with veterans and 8 years working with the newest returning from Iraq and Afghanistan.
Yeah.
And a lot of them have family members, World War II, Korea, etc., that have maybe negative opinions about what the VA has to offer. And encouraging them to come to the new VA has been quite a challenge because there are new programs.
Yeah.
And just trying to change the mindset of those, particularly those that have family members that did not get positive, experiences at the VA.
Yeah, I think that's really great, and I think that that's a very important confirmation bias, and I think that's a really great example of how it plays out in a clinical setting. And one really good strategy that I found to deal with the confirmation bias is to not talk to the individual as though he or she is just a simple individual, but to point out this pattern. All VAs and all soldiers, all veterans, tend to have this sort of thinking about the VA administration and saying that the VA is systematically better than you're used to. So whenever you have a suspicion of the Veterans Association, give it up, lower your suspicion level by 50% or something like pointing out the systematic thinking error to a veteran and just say this is just a part of what happens. And it's a strategy called de-anchoring, going away from where one happens to be emotionally because of those associations and saying, well, this is a more effective way of thinking, it will help you achieve your goals because you actually want the VA to give you those benefits. So that might be a helpful strategy. What do you think?
How they did it nationally was they created a national blurb. They hired specific people and over and above the traditional group to go out to the communities and speak to the veterans in their units. So the VA took a different approach in terms of trying to invite these people to the new VA. So they sort of used some of your strategies there.
Yeah, no, I think that's a great strategy that the VA can do. And what I'm concerned is with what you can do as individual social workers to help your clients succeed. Because your goal is to help the clients achieve their goals, to give the resources from the VA that they deserve. And if the clients are not willing to go to the VA, or if they're suspicious of the VA, that inhibits your client's ability to succeed, to achieve their goals. So our goal as social workers, therapists, your goal is to help the clients overcome their suspicions. And that's a strategy of helping your clients overcome their suspicions by pointing out the systematic bias and saying, well, in order to accomplish your goals, be a little bit less suspicious than you intuitively feel. It then emotionally feels like you should be. Anyone else wants to give an example?
I have an example.
Sure, please.
So, attentional bias, the tendency to pay attention to emotionally dominant stimuli in one's environment.
Yeah.
I think this comes up a lot with clients, and that single event will get them stirred up and they lose perspective from the other things that might be going right in their life and so forth. And that they are expending a particular amount of energy on something that they don't necessarily have control over.
Okay.
So one of the approaches to take with that has been to step back, have them step back and look at the rest of the situation.
Yeah.
And specifically, they've defined goals that they want to work on, discussing how those particular actions are in support or not in support of the goals that we established.
I think that's an excellent strategy. And I think that segues very well into the next element, which is how to help them frame their emotions and their thoughts very successfully, and how to just help them manage their emotions and their thoughts. And that's what I want to talk about in the rest of the presentation. So thank you for that wonderful segue. So there's a concept called failing at other minds, which I want to talk a little bit about. And that's one of the things in the presentation, in the handout that I gave you. Failing at other minds, the assumption that other people think just like you. And that is a problem that is a human problem. There is a problem that we all experience, that our brains all experience. You know, that I experience, you experience, everyone else experiences. It's very easy to think that other people think just like I do, just like we do. So, but, you know, this person, you don't know, you really don't know from the evidence if somebody says bat, whether they mean a flying bat or a baseball bat. But it's very intuitive to think, oh, bat, that means exactly the same thing that I'm thinking it means. But it's very hard to actually know what the person means. It's very easy to make a mistake and make assumptions about what other people think. And there's a particular element of it that applies to us as experts. It's called the curse of knowledge. So the curse of knowledge is the idea that because we know something, we assume it's very easy for others to know it. And that it's very, very easy for others to know it, and it's very intuitive for others to know it. And it applies especially to experts who know the topic. And we forget how long it took to actually get that knowledge of the topic. And what I tend to find when I speak both to social workers and especially their clients is that there's a gap. There's a gap in understanding. We fail at the minds of our clients very often, and we suffer from a curse of knowledge about the minds of our clients very often. And so it's crucial to bridge this inference gap to get to a shared understanding. Inference gap refers to a gap between the understanding between us and our clients, between those we want to teach and we want to share and we want to motivate and our actual clients. And this is where the question of motivation and understanding comes in. Very often, when I speak to the clients of social workers, when I speak to the clients of therapists, when social workers, when therapists tell them to do something, the clients just don't know why they're being told to do this thing. They are being told to, okay, these are the steps you need to take. And then the client is like, well, why are these the steps I need to take? But they don't ask the social worker. They don't know that they should ask the social worker. They just know that this is what the social worker told them to do. And often, the social worker, the therapist, you know, I fail at other minds. We fail at the minds of those people. We have the curse of knowledge. We think, okay, this is the thing that should be done. Let me give you the advice about the thing that should be done. And we forget about this inference gap. We forget about the gap between our understanding and their understanding. And they are not motivated. This goes to the question of motivation. They're not motivated to do the specific things that they need to do in order to get better. And sometimes I think that it's great that you outline specific steps for clients to do, but sometimes even specific steps are not outlined. So specific steps are not outlined, they don't know the specific next thing that they need to do. And it's often been the case that when I speak to the clients of social workers and therapists, I mean, I go to therapy myself, and I have found that often my therapist gives me things that would work for her, but not things that would work for me. And I have to be very intentional about guiding her and telling her, I hear that's what would work for you, but I'm a different person, you know, and I know this stuff, you know, and it still happens. And my therapist knows that I know this stuff, and we have these exchanges at regular rates. You know, imagine someone who doesn't know that they should give guidance to therapists. But there's that failure to build a shared framework of understanding of how the human mind works and how we think as people, and why they should take the steps that we advise them to take. And even if those steps work for them, because people are so different, and we don't know whether those steps would actually work for those specific people. And we're often rushed, we have little time, and we don't figure out how they think, and what they think, and why they think in these ways, and whether the specific things we tell them would actually be very helpful for those people themselves. And that's the crucial thing about building a shared understanding. And a shared understanding about how our emotions and our thoughts work. Now, this shared understanding takes some time to build at the beginning of the therapist relationship to the patient. It takes time, but it's so worth it. It's so worth it. I'm going to tell you right now. You know that hyperbolic discounting that Jeff mentioned? We don't want to be the victims of hyperbolic discounting ourselves. If we imagine each of our relationships with our patients is going to be a long-term relationship, then that investment at the early stage to build a shared framework of understanding is so crucial in order to help us understand what the client is actually like, how the client thinks, how the client feels, what their motivations are. And that's so important to build into at the beginning of our relationship, as opposed to just figuring out problems and just giving them specific targeted advice, because they might not know, it might not be advice that's fit for them, and they wouldn't have this understanding of why they should follow that. And as part of that understanding, it's so crucial to convey to our clients that our emotions and thoughts are different things, that they're not the same thing, that our brain is a complex ecosystem of different modules, of different emotion patterns, of different thought patterns, that basically we are not our thoughts, helping clients see that we are not our thoughts. And why am I using this image of elephant and rider? Does anyone know? I'm curious. If anyone knows what, this difference between the brain and the person on the elephant. I'm curious if anyone knows why I'm using that metaphor. I know some people in the room know.
I think Agnes knows.
Do you want to take a shot at it?
Sure. So according to some research about neuroscience, one of the suggestions for how our mind works is that between the emotions and the kind of the logic part of our brain, the emotions are about 90% roughly, and the logic, reasoning, what we think like, oh, what I think I am, what I feel I am, that's only 10%. And the 90%, what really drives us, and this huge, basically an elephant, it's something that we don't even feel. It's our emotions, our feelings, our reflexes. And so that's why, that's one idea that's kind of easy for lay people to understand, is the rider and elephant. That kind of shows us that the rider is the reason you can't steer the elephant, but really it's not as easy, it's not easy at all, because the elephant is so huge, but it is possible, and it takes special effort, and that they work together, and that's why it's kind of hard to, why can't I just think so? Why can't I believe so? And we kind of evolved to have all these emotions way, through the millennia, and they really help us a lot. But right now in our modern lifestyle, emotions, how they work so quickly, and they sometimes get in the way, being that we have so many stimuli and so many stressors in our everyday life. So that's kind of one thing, and one metaphor that Intentional Insights uses a lot to kind of discuss these ideas in an easier way. But I'm sure, since it's a room full of social workers, this is all just an easy way to wrap up something you already know and learned a long time ago.
Yeah, so I think that hits it right on. So this framework of elephant and rider is an easy way for people to understand some really complex things. Now, this is, Agnes said right, that this is one approach, and it's there's a lot of science behind this approach. So we have the work of Daniel Kahneman, a Nobel laureate winner, who published a book, Thinking Fast and Slow, if you want to get deeply into this, which specifically talks about the details of what he calls System 1 and System 2. So our brain has two systems of processing: the emotional system and the logical system, the reasoning system. There are other names for this besides System 1 and 2, but these are two basic similar concepts. The emotional system, System 1, the elephant, the autopilot system, it's subconscious. It's automatic, it's our habits. It's what we intuitively think. It turns on in a couple of milliseconds after a response to external stimuli. It's very intuitive. It's what we feel, it's what we immediately grasp. Now, that's system one, that's the autopilot system, that's the huge big elephant. That's about 90% of how we process, of what happens in our brain. That's the emotional modules. Now, system two, that's the rider system. That's the one on top. Now, just to be clear, system one, as Agnes explained, has evolved much earlier onward. That's the system that's called this, you might have heard of it as the saber-tooth response. You know, the thing that caused us to jump out of the way of a moving car before we even know what we did. It's a good thing. We want to jump out of the way of that moving car, but it's not good for, you know, when our boss gives us negative feedback that we really should learn from, as opposed to be like la 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 and not listening. That's a bad response. You don't want to do that saber-tooth response when your boss gives you constructive critical feedback, or when a colleague does something that you would rather the colleague doesn't do, or when a client curses at you. That's not the response you want to be having, that system one response in the moment when you're dealing with a client who's somewhat hostile. What you want to use is more of the system two, the rider response. But that's a very effortful response in all of those cases, in any of those cases. It's a very effortful response. It's very intentional. It takes much more energy. It takes about a second to turn on that system two, the rider response, the intentional system. It's conscious, it's mindful. It's when we really pay attention to something. It's slow, it's reasoning and logical. Now, it's really, in many ways, the less exciting, but the much more rational system. So it's very important to help clients see that we are not system two. It feels intuitively to us like we are our thoughts, but really we're so much more than just our thoughts. We are our emotions, and those are not immediately consciously accessible to us. We don't know immediately consciously what we feel. We only know what we think. Our emotions come out, they motivate our thoughts, they motivate our behaviors, they motivate our habits, but we are not able to immediately consciously access them. So that's, we think we are this brain part, but we really are is this whole huge totality of the elephant and the rider. And believe me, the emotions, the elephant, are much more fun and colorful than the rider. They are much bigger than the rider as well. So it's very important to convey this idea to our clients, that we are distinct from our thoughts. We are our emotions and our thoughts together. And we are our emotions and thoughts at just this current stage in life. It's just where we happen to be right now. One thing that clients often run into is in that self-motivation for change, it's because the change is the effortful part. The change is the system two part. You have to pay a lot of attention to change. It takes a lot of effort to change. It's very mindful, it's very slow, it's very reasoning, it's very logical. And one thing that I tend to see in a problem that social workers and therapists tend to systematically run into is that they don't convey to their clients how hard it is to change. And because this idea is not conveyed to clients, clients just try something out and then they abandon it. They don't stick with it because we don't convey to them how hard it is to change and how important it is to change, how important it is for the long run. So as Jeff was talking about the hyperbolic discounting, we don't put enough efforts into motivating them to change and into explaining to them that it will be hard to change our emotions. It's a really hard thing to do. And if we explain to them, if we make it clear to them how hard it is to change, but how rewarding it is to change in the long term, how much better off their lives will be if they change in the long term, they'll be much more capable of change. But we need to explain them how their minds work, how their emotions work, and how their thoughts work. We need to explain to them that they are not their thoughts. Their current thoughts and their current emotions are just where they are in life right now. and that they can be different. They can be different, and they can succeed in accomplishing their goals. And that where they are currently is not a sacred thing. It's just the current state of their self, and they can change for the future. So motivating them to change for the future. We know we can help clients reframe their emotions and thoughts to improve at life, to win at life. And that's, as Agnes mentioned, that's something that Intentional Insights does. We provide a lot of content that help clients understand, that help people everywhere understand in an easy to read way, to digest way, how to win at life and how to improve those specific patterns of thinking, feeling, and behavior. So we have blogs that are easy to read, that have stories, images, pictures, videos, short ones, long ones, engaging ones, but really help people improve their thinking, feeling, and behavior patterns in easy to digest ways because of that emotional motivation. You need to help them get emotionally motivated to change, to make those tough changes in life. And the sheet that I handed out to you is about a group that meets here in Columbus Rationality. It's part of a humanist community of Central Ohio, so it has mostly secular people, some non-secular people, so keep that in mind. But that might be a group that you might enjoy attending, and your clients might enjoy attending to help them improve their thinking, feeling, and behavior patterns, and to help them win at life in these ways. And again, the crucial thing is to motivate your clients, motivate them, and put the effort into motivating them, put the effort into conveying to them how their minds work at the beginning stages of your relationship. Believe me, it's going to be so worthwhile down the road to do that for you. And trust me, your clients will be grateful to you for doing so. They'll be really grateful to you for the efforts that you put into this thing. They will thank you, trust me. This will be something, and they may not know that they should be grateful to you, but they really would be grateful to you. Their elephants will be grateful to you, and their riders will be grateful to you, because you will help them succeed. You will help them achieve those positive self-changes that they find so hard to achieve. If you orient toward their emotions, if you are emotionally intelligent toward your clients. So we've been talking about emotional intelligence and rational thinking. And this is emotional intelligence. This is you being emotionally intelligent toward your clients. And emotionally intelligent and rational in your thinking about them, because you think about the whole person, not only their thoughts, but their emotions as well. And you help your clients become emotionally intelligent by helping them become aware of their emotions, what their emotions are like, where their emotions take them, and how they can be more rational in using their rider to direct their elephant. And also help them become emotionally intelligent toward others in their lives. So we talked about relationships as being a really important component. So helping your clients have emotional intelligence about others. Think about it. As your clients learn about who they are, their rational thinking patterns and their emotional thinking patterns, they can use this knowledge to help improve their relationships with everyone in their lives, if they have this knowledge, and they can convey it to others. So you can be a very powerful driver and motivator of change in clients' lives and in their ability to interact with other people in their lives. So believe me, they will be grateful to you. So now I want to move toward a group discussion. I want you to think about how your clients having this growth framework of thinking can help them be a better ally with you as a social worker, as a therapist. What are some specific examples of situations when you think clients can benefit from having this growth framework? And if you think this growth framework would be beneficial for clients to have, what specific steps can you take to help them gain this information? So find a couple of people around you and have a 5-minute discussion where you get at these 3 questions. All right? Let's go with how do you think clients having this growth framework can help them be a better ally with you? Yes, please.
One thing is that by offering that model of the rider and the elephant, for example, that you're validating for them that emotions are a big thing and
Yes.
it isn't an easy thing to get hold of. And then also providing them with some information that it's potentially within reach, but that there are steps to take and that it will be some work to get there. So you're letting them know up front.
Okay, yeah, that's great. So letting them know upfront, and you're validating their emotions, and you're helping them respect their emotions. You're both signaling to them that you respect their emotions, and you're helping them respect their emotions. And you're helping convey to them that there are specific steps, and they'll be hard, because overcoming and retraining the elephant is a hard thing to do. And it's a good metaphor for them to think about retraining an elephant, because it's obviously for the mind, it's a good mental metaphor for how hard it is to do, but it's doable, and it just takes time and efforts. That's great. Thank you. Can I ask another group to deal with some specific situations? Some specific situations where you think some of the stuff might be helpful.
So we don't have clients, because none of us are social workers.
Sure. Well, that's fine.
So we were interpreting it maybe in a more personal aspect.
Yes, sure.
And one thing that Andrew came up with is, like, whenever you have a little brother, and your
Okay.
little brother thinks you're being mean and like or trying to control him, you could explain to him about the reactance.
Okay.
And like, I understand where you're coming from, and you would use the not telling it otherwise, right? So why don't you tell
Yes.
me what's going on? And then you would explain to him your point of view, and then you would be like, so there's a thing called reactance, which basically means because you think that I'm trying to make you do one thing, you know, you would like to do another thing.
Yeah.
And maybe kind of use that playing out what's going on as a stepping stool to kind of like get past the emotional.
Barrier. And again,
Yes.
you're validating their emotions, showing that you're on their side, and that you kind of understand at least some of what they're going through, and that you can respect their boundaries. That's great. And I think that might also relate to the parents and children issue that was brought up earlier, kind of their relationships. So I think that's great. I know that I was participating in a discussion where sunken costs was mentioned. Would you like to share a little bit about how you can use sunken costs maybe with your clients?
Yeah, well, we had talked about it, because in some of my situations in the medical field, it's not necessarily something where you're doing a lot of cognitive work intentionally. So in dealing with a child who maybe has experienced some kind of traumatic event, whether it be following an accident or something, an illness that has presented parents in a situation where they're not going to necessarily have the same child that they had anticipated, framing it in that sense of rather than fixating on what could have been, and living in that area, working in a different perspective.
Yeah,
moving forward.
reframing them. Thank you. Yes, and we've also talked about how helping the parents see, well, what if you still thought that way a year from now? What kind of impact would it have on your life? So motivating them to change, giving them that motivation, helping them see how they can be motivated to change. Thank you for sharing that. And the last one, what specific steps can you help to take your clients gain this information if you think this broad framework of thinking can be useful for them to have? Yes, Drew.
So there's a client that has had some very either anxious or angry reactions to some situations, who I was recently training to practice mentally describing a situation,
Okay.
simply describing the facts of a situation, in which he's separating the emotions, what the elephant is experiencing or what the elephant is wanting to do, from simply describing what are the facts. This and this is going on. I use the analogy of a police officer writing a report.
Yeah,
This person did this person did that.
I think that's wonderful. So you're getting that person to separate the rationally. So you're getting them to essentially turn on their system too, turn on their rider, which takes a while to turn on when you're, especially in an emotionally aroused state. So getting them to turn it on, to describe the situation, and then they can separately and distinctly consider their emotions as part of it. So also validating their emotions, getting them to respect their emotions, but also getting them to think about their emotions. So being emotionally intelligent about their about their emotions and what impact their emotions have on their lives. I think that's really great. Okay, so those are some good examples. And now I'd like to move to the Q&A section and see if you have any questions for me. So first of all, I want to mention that there's a PowerPoint of this presentation at slideshare.net at Intentional Insights.
Do you have it?
And there's, my book is available on Find Your Purpose Using Science, which I mentioned is available at this URL. You can get in touch with me for any follow-up questions at gleb@intentionalinsights.org. You can go yourself or direct your clients to our website, intentionalinsights.org. We also have a Facebook page, a Twitter, a YouTube, and a Pinterest account. So I really appreciate you attending this presentation, and I want to thank you for coming here. So thank you. I hope you get it.
Thank you.